I'm Kathleen Hawkins, and I am so excited to be here today to share with you a couple of fabulous presenters on WOAMTEC Live. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your very important day to listen, to learn, and to be empowered and inspired to make a difference in the lives of others. You know, today's show is all about being a mom, all about the characteristics and the kindness and the sacrifices and the personal growth that it takes to empower a child and to make a difference in their lives. We're going to meet three fabulous women who are not only leading by example, but they're paving the way for the future of our children. But before I begin, I want to first start by saying thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping out and supporting the Confident Woman 2012 Spring National Conference. We had hundreds of powerful, professional, passionate women present at that conference, and we really educated and motivated and inspired people to find the magic within them. And not only that, I want to give a special shout out and a very big thank you to Nancy Hohen for leading the silent auction and for making a difference to help us support our cause this year to help Habitat for Humanity. Because of your efforts, Nancy, and the efforts of all of those that donated items to the silent auction, we were able to raise $1,000 on that day. So we not only educated, we not only empowered, we not only networked, we not only helped support local businesses with our trade show, but we made the difference in the lives of others, and we will improve a family one step at a time. So thank you so much for being a part of that. We had people from across the nation that were present, and for those of you that weren't able to be there, mark your calendar now, October 4th, 2012, the 5th anniversary Confident Women Conference. We are going to teach you how to go light up the world and make a difference not only in your life, but the life of others. I am so excited to introduce our next guest. This is a fabulous lady that I am so proud to have had the pleasure of meeting. She is part of our Central Florida bilingual chapter, and she is an amazing woman. I have never met an attorney that does as much as this woman does, and I can't wait for you to meet her too. Please welcome Miss Rachel Alvarez. Rachel, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to have you here today, and I look forward to getting to know you better. Tell everybody who you are and tell them a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Kathleen. My name is Rachel Alvarez. I'm a local attorney in Winter Park, Florida. I assist my clients with financial matters, and most people want to know what financial matters are, and we help them with bankruptcy, estate planning, asset protection, corporations, and asset purchases.
Okay. Asset purchases, that's kind of interesting to me. I'd like you to talk to me a little bit about that, just to make sure our audience members know exactly what you mean in regards to that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the past 5 years and how your client demographics may have changed, and just exactly how you're helping people and what you're doing. So define asset purchases for me first.
Asset purchases are acquiring a business. A lot of times people think that I'm going to do an asset purchase, it's purchasing a home, it's purchasing property. That could be all inclusive in an asset purchase, but typically when we're talking legally about an asset purchase, it's to purchase and acquire a business.
Okay. So speaking of purchasing a business, So speaking of purchasing a business, I think that's really important, and one of the many things that I found a lot of our WOAMTEC members and a lot of the people that I come into contact with face is not having a proper exit strategy, not having a proper plan, not knowing what's going to happen with their business. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're out there watching this show right now, one of the things that I want to suggest to you is really think about where you're going with your business, what your legacy is going to be, what you're going to pass on. You know, just the other day I had a business assessment consultation with one of our many members, and I do this often because that's one of the many benefits of being a member. And when I was talking to her, I said to her, what is your exit strategy? What are you planning on doing, you know, in the next 10, 15, 20 years? You know, how are you going to exit from this business that you've created? And her response to me was, Kathleen, I plan on, you know, I plan on working until I die. And I said, you know, you could do that if you choose to do that, but I would think that if you put all the blood, sweat, and tears into something that you're so passionate about for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, that you should have a plan that will carry on a legacy to your husband, to your children, to your family, to your grandchildren, and create that legacy by having an exit strategy, but also having a sound financial plan and an estate plan or a business plan. So tell me, Rachel, what would you do, or what would you suggest a woman that suggest to a woman that owns a business? What would you suggest they do to prepare for their future and to carry on a legacy?
A lot of times what we run into with business owners is that they don't have a plan of action. And it's important to have any type of plan of action, business strategies. It's important when you have your family also to have an estate plan. You can incorporate your estate plan into your corporate documents. You can have your own will and your trust, and there's so many different documents and vehicles that the law allows for you to be able to plan ahead just in case. It's kind of like an insurance policy where you'll have this policy and you'll make sure that everything's prepared, but you may not always have to use it immediately, and it's very good to have that plan and that strategy ahead of time.
I think that that's important. I think that that is something that a lot of members miss. But even more important than protecting your business, I think that we really need to encourage our members to protect their family, their future. You know, one of the experience I had with working with children in the child welfare system is I was in an office once, and I was at an organization, a case management organization that helped take care of children that were in foster care. And I superficially stereotyped a young man, a young adult, a teenager that was in that home, that was in that organization. And when the teenager left, the case manager looked at me and said, "Kathleen, you don't realize that that kid is just like your kids. That kid is just like all of our kids." And she said that child was put into that foster care situation because their parents hadn't planned, and they were killed in a car accident. So this kid went from being in private school in a nice area, a wealthy neighborhood, to all of a sudden being faced with being in foster care while the legal issues were worked out. And since Mother's Day is coming up, like, I really want to speak to our members, and I really want to address the situation, because I would be devastated to know that my poor planning made something like that happen. So talk a little bit about why estate planning is important.
Estate planning is important for many reasons. If you have minor children, it's important to know who's going to raise your children. What happens is a lot of times we just assume it'll be my mother, it'll be my husband, or it'll be, you know, the child's father, or something of that nature. And unfortunately, the state of Florida doesn't necessarily deem it to be that way. And what we see a lot of is that people just assume. And that's not something that we have to continue to focus on. In the future, what we can do is go ahead and have a plan of action. You can set forth who you want to raise your children. You do a pre-needed guardianship, and at that point you designate this person will raise my child. And you have more control as to who is going to raise your children, who's going to intervene, who's going to have that interaction in your absence.
I think that's so huge, and I think that that's so important, and it's something that, you know, we never expect the unexpected to happen, and that's why it's called an accident. And we all know what happens when we assume things, which I think is important. One of the things that I want to really address is, you know, how do you protect your family, and what happens if you don't protect your family? Like, how much time could go by before a judge issues where your children are going to be? How much time could go by, or how much financial obligations can be affected if something goes into litigation? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, what are some of the decisions that our members really need to make when it comes to their financial future, their family's future, their legacy?
A lot of times what we don't realize is we don't know when our time is up. And so we just wait and hold off and postpone it till maybe someday I'll get around to it. And unfortunately, we don't have a time frame that says, okay, on this date at this time, we will expire. So it is important to have that plan immediately. If you just have children, or you have several children, it's important to have those things in place. There's different vehicles, such as a will. You can have a guardianship. You can have a trust. There's so many things that you can set up for your children, for their future. And if you don't, then you do end up in litigation. It could be years, and your children are in foster care instead of being in the comfort of your siblings or their own family. So it's important, because if we strategize and we take the time to plan ahead, we won't have to subject our children or our families to those type of ramifications.
Wow, how important would that be? Like, if you really think about it, I'm choosing to procrastinate, I'm choosing to put off, I'm choosing to not make my kids a priority because I'm making my kids a priority. It's kind of like a catch-22 situation if you're not making those decisions for yourself, for your family, and for you. I think that that's so important. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I know you do bankruptcy and I know you do short sales or like foreclosure attorney stuff and legal stuff, what if people have been affected? Let's say someone they dotted all their I's, they crossed all their T's, they had everything in place, and then boom, 2008 hit, and they lost it all. They lost their house, they lost their their plan. Who knows? Maybe the person that they thought was going to take care of their children can't take care of their children anymore because they lost it all, and now they're just tumbling out of control. Who knows what that plan might be? What would you tell somebody who has had an estate plan already in place, and then life changes?
Life changes for everyone. And unfortunately, we cannot predict what the future will be. We don't know how those circumstances are going to change. And if your life has changed in such a significant way, then it's great to have your estate plan updated. If the person that you have designated has been disappeared, or become unreliable, or for some reason doesn't have the ability to take care of your children, you should update that information, because if not, again, that person can say, well, I am not capable of taking care of your children. Now the state of Florida steps in, or the state that your children are in, and then they make that determination for you. So it's always important to have, when life-changing things such as a marriage, a divorce, another child, if you purchase a lot of assets, if you lose your assets, those are all very key things to focus on when we're actually doing an estate plan.
That's so important, because I know that in our particular life, because we have adopted 3 children since we did our estate plan, everything has changed. A lot of the circumstances have changed, and I think that really encouraging us to constantly reevaluate, almost like every time you change your smoke alarms, or every time you do your taxes, like really looking at what's happening in your life and how can you protect your children, and how can you just keep them safe. With our daughter, she actually came to live with us out of foster care because she was living with her grandmother, and the state deemed the grandmother inappropriate because the grandmother wasn't able to take care of herself or defend herself. And the grandmother loved her. We still keep in touch with her, but that's how our oldest daughter came to live with us, and that's how she came to foster care. So that's exactly the situation that you're talking about and that could happen. So let's talk a little bit about when someone is faced with a financial crisis, and when they're stressed, and when they don't know what they're going to do, and they don't know where they're going to go, and they're thinking, should I give up my house? Should I keep my house? Should I short sell my house? Like, what are the options? When is it time for them to come to see you?
It's important to come and see an attorney when you're having these questions. What is my next step? What am I going to do? A lot of times circumstances change for employment reasons, financial reasons. Again, even a divorce can create financial difficulties. So it's important to find a strategy, to plan ahead, to have a plan of action. So if you even are contemplating and having those thoughts, it's important to go seek some professional advice.
Can you do a short sale without seeing an attorney? Can you do a foreclosure or go through a foreclosure without an attorney? And how can an attorney be beneficial?
There is no legal requirement in our state for us to have an attorney involved in a short sale. You can have a real estate agent short sell the property, they can negotiate on your behalf, and so there's no requirement that you have that attorney. There are certain states, such as New York, that you are required to have a real estate attorney do your entire transaction. But the actual process of a short sale is something that you can make that determination, but the bank has to approve it. So it's not necessarily always smooth sailing.
I know one of the things that I like the most about you is you do an awful lot. You do a lot in marketing. You do a lot with nonprofits. You do a lot of community work. You're a huge community advocate. And just recently, I had the pleasure of being at an event that you did where I know you raised a lot of money for charity, and that's so exciting. I've done a lot of volunteer work. I've done a lot of charity work, and I know the benefits of helping the community, of being a team player, of making a difference in the lives of others. And like really what you put out there always comes back to you. And I get that. But not everybody does. A lot of people think I'm donating, I'm giving my time, I'm losing money. Like a lot of people think that when they're working with nonprofits. Tell me a little bit about your nonprofit work.
Nonprofit organizations and nonprofit work, it's a very special place in my heart. I think that a lot of people misunderstand the whole nonprofit sector in itself. There's so many different misconceptions of what it should be, what it entails. And for us, what I have done is I have made it part of my practice. I've sat on a lot of boards and I've seen that there's a need out there for people to get some direction, for these organizations to set up themselves according to what the law says, according to what the IRS says. These are very important agencies that come in and they have the right to scrutinize us. So as a nonprofit attorney, I also have the right and the ability to help them and make sure that they have the right guidance. What I've also done is set up a nonprofit organization where there's not necessarily the resources from those nonprofits, so they're able to apply to see if we're able to help them and then get them back on track. And it's not necessarily someone who's just starting a nonprofit organization, but it's also those existing nonprofit organizations having issues getting members, getting interest, and being able to get out in the community. So we help them with all these type of events.
I think that's wonderful. Can you work with nonprofits across the country, or do you have to specifically work with nonprofits in Florida? Like what, and as far as being an attorney, can you work with people all across America, or are you restricted to just Florida?
As an attorney, you're licensed to practice in the state of Florida. I also have my federal license, so there's certain areas that I can help people with the federal laws that we help where it's nationwide, where we're using the federal law to apply. So those are certain things that we can do, and I can help my clients here in Florida or any federal court in the United States. I think that I also assist these nonprofit organizations in their marketing and their strategies and their business planning. So I could do that nationwide.
I think that's wonderful, and I'm so impressed with you and everything that you've done. I do want to know a little bit about how has the volunteer work that you've done, how has that blessed your business, helped your business? Because I think that there is a benefit to doing some of the things that you've done. How has that made you viewed by others in your community?
My particular concept of giving is you give not expecting anything in return. However, that is so far from the truth. When you give, you get so much in return. And one of the things that I was able to do is establish a network. And I actually met a couple of the WOAMTEC women, and I established a really great friendship. And even with some of these nonprofit events, they've shown up and they've shown their support just to help our community. And that to me is just, it touches my heart to know that this is the type of women that I've surrounded myself with. And I know that this is all about the heart of giving to each other and helping each other and supporting each other. So that in itself is paid off in so many different ways. I've developed these friendships. I've been able to refer business to them. They've been able to refer business to me. They really have this good work ethic, and I'm so appreciative of those.
I am so excited that you truly get the mission of WOAMTEC. Like, that is so cool that I just heard you say that. You know, it's really about surrounding yourself with people that are positive, passionate, proactive, faithful women with integrity. And I think that that is so, so huge. And that's why you're successful, and that's why you'll continue to be successful as a WOAMTEC member. Now, if you could give any advice to any of our members as to one of the biggest things that you see in your life, whether it be in your volunteer life, in your marketing life, in your legal life, like whatever plate you're spinning at this moment, if you could give them any advice as to the number one thing that you think can be a game changer for them, what would that advice be?
I would have to say, find your inspiration, find your passion. Because when you are able to find that passion within you, it's easy to be positive. It's great to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, and people will help follow your cause.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here today. Before we conclude, I'd love you to tell everybody how they can contact you. Now, if you're a WOAMTEC member, you know you can contact her via the WOAMTEC member directory. Just go to attorney and do a search. And I think you're lucky enough that your name comes up first because it starts with an A for Alvarez. So make sure that you do connect with her. Connect via Facebook, connect via LinkedIn or Twitter, or just send her an email, because you know it really is about creating strategic connections across America, because it's not just about your chapter. It's not just about the four walls in the restaurant that you meet at. It's really about creating relationships, creating friendships, creating mentorships and ways that you can grow together across America as a community and empower one another and lift each other up. So tell everybody, if they wanted to connect with you just to get to know you a little bit better, to help you with your nonprofit cause, to encourage you or invite you to meet with other nonprofits, what would they do to reach out and connect with you? Could you share your website with everybody, please?
Yes, our website is www.rachelalvarez.com. We have multiple videos on there talking about the events that we do, about the areas of practice that we practice, and feel free to email me directly. My email address is on the website. Anytime you email on that website, it'll get a question to me. If you want to connect with me, you're more than welcome to do so. I invite you to do so.
Thank you so much for being here today, Rachel. I am sure you benefited lots of people. You know, as you continue to move forward, make sure you stop and take the time to protect your family, to protect your business, but most of all, to protect your life alone.
My mom is pretty. I'm a future WOAMTEC woman.
My mom is successful.
My mom is My mom is successful. My mom is awesome.
My mom is a WOAMTEC mom.
We are watching you.
My mom is confident.
My mom is faithful. We're on a mission to one mission.
I am a future WOAMTEC woman.
Boys welcome, girls are required.
I am a WOAMTEC woman.
I am a WOAMTEC woman. We are WOAMTEC women. They have big shoes to fill. WOAMTEC!
In the spirit of Mother's Day, I am so excited to introduce the very next guest. She is an amazing woman that is not only making a difference in the lives of children, but she has changed over 100 families. And she has a personal treasure of her own. So please welcome to the set today an incredible woman. Dawn, thank you so much for being here today. Tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us about your business.
Thank you, Kathleen, for having me. I'm Dawn Klungseth, and I started the Adoption Key. We're an adoption consulting firm that exclusively represents 100% of the time adopted families going through their entire adoption journey. And I followed a passion in order to do this.
I think that's so amazing because as an adopted mom myself of 3 amazing, wonderful children, I remember starting that journey. I remember what it was like to Google, adoption and be lost out there. I remember what it was like to buy my first adoption magazine and have everything geared towards international adoption or domestic adoptions. And I remember going to the DCF website and kind of being like, I felt bad because I wanted a baby so bad, but all the images that were on the DCF website were older children or children with medical needs. And I remember talking to my mom and saying, I felt so much guilt because I wanted to have a child so bad. And I felt like I was being judgmental. I felt like I was being unrealistic. I felt like I was being selfish. And it is a process. It is a journey. And you do have, God has a plan, but you do have to find the child that is meant for you. And it would be helpful to have someone that can educate you on that process without being just the person, the agency, the attorney, the person that's going to make the most profit from the transaction or from the adoption of that child. So thank you so much for being here today. Tell me a little bit about how you got into this business.
Well, my husband and I were we married later in life, and we wanted to have a family. We wanted to be mom and dad. And we had a little bit of difficulty, so we decided we needed a little help through a fertility doctor. And while we were going through the process, adoption option became apparent to us. And we thought, okay, let's look more into this. So what we did was we wanted to find somebody to educate us on the process and coach us and be there every step of the way. But we couldn't find anybody. So like most people who want to get a little bit more educated in today's technology, we went to the web. And I spent hours and hours and hours educating myself. And as we started our adoption journey, we felt very educated, extremely educated. However, going through our adoption journey, we felt very uneducated. It is a journey of ups and downs, twists and turns, and we became very stressed, felt very vulnerable, and it was one of the biggest decisions we're ever going to make in our lifetime for us and for this child.
I think that's huge, and you're exactly right. It is the biggest decision you're ever going to make, and I know you made it, because I think that's so cool that you've adopted too. And I know that a lot of people make the, in my opinion, wrong decision by not adopting because of the fear of the unknown. And I think that's really important. You know, on my very first home study application, because we did try and adopt domestically, privately, for 2 years before meeting our daughter through foster care. And on our very first application, I will admit, and I try and educate as many people as possible, that I put down that I would not accept a child that was born drug dependent, and I put down that I would accept a child that was born with fetal alcohol syndrome before a drug dependent child. I also put down that I would not take a child that was African American. Well, those of you that know me know that my husband and I have adopted 3 amazing children, one who is biracial and obviously African American, and another who is born chemically dependent. My reason for putting those things down, and this is what I like to tell case managers often, because I put down not taking an African American child because I had the fear of not knowing what to do with their hair. Like, how ridiculous is that? You know, it was a fear, it was a panic, it was something that I was afraid of. And if I would have had someone to coach me through that process, I would have said absolutely not a problem. And guess what? Today I've mastered that challenge. You know, I know how to do my daughter's hair. The chemical dependency, not accepting that, but accepting a fetal alcohol syndrome child, it was just my lack of knowledge. It was the unknown. And I think that is so important, is finding, we found the right children because someone helped us to find them. Someone helped us through the process. But there's not a lot of people out there like you. So I applaud you for that. Now talk to me about some of the services, some of the things that you do for people, and not just women that are facing infertility. Like I think that your family faced that as well. My family faced that. Not just women that have never had a child, but maybe women that are sitting there saying, you know, I might want another child, I might be interested in having a baby, or I might consider adopting. Talk to me about some of the other things you do to help them through those thought processes.
That's a very good thing to talk about, because I have a lot of people who call me and they had a very difficult first biological birth, and they just don't want to go through it again. Their life is dependent upon it for various reasons, and they want to learn the process and the options that they have. And there are several options to going through adoption, and you bring up the education of drugs. And you make a very good point of all those different concerns, and you are not the only one that has those questions. There's a lot of families that do not want to go through having a biological child again because of difficulties that they had. So they want to learn more about the adoption options of international, newborn, domestic, and the state foster care system. And we will help anybody who wants to learn more about our local state foster care. People often say to me, I don't want an African American child. And I'll say, okay, what if the child is 1/16 African American? Would you then be open to an African American child? And they say, of course I will. And this is part of the education that we have. There's a lot of drugs out there. Of course, we don't want to have drugs involved, but there are drugs that sometimes come up. It's a myth that all birth mothers are on drugs. It's just not true. However, there are, when they are on drugs, there are worse drugs than others. You kind of have that 180-degree spectrum, and you learn about them. You learn about them in the birth mother's womb. You learn how they're going to affect your child after they're born. And a lot of them, there's just no concern. And adoption is a leap of faith. God directs you.
You know, I think that's huge, and that's the exact reason why I brought up having a child that was born chemically dependent and then having a child that was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, because I checked alcohol was okay because I was confident that my mom probably smoked and drank when she was pregnant, because that's what they did back in the, I won't tell you what year. But, you know, what I didn't know is that fetal alcohol syndrome is actually much worse long-term effect than the chemical dependency of the crack cocaine drug that my son was born on. And once my son went through the withdrawals, the chance of him being affected by crack again, if I raise him right, would be much lower than the chance of my daughter going through and never having a drink for the rest of her life. Because if she does, she's going to be affected much longer, much long term. So it's that education. I think that that's so important, but it's also important to really analyze, you know, what is the passion in your heart. You're right, God directs you. I completely agree with it. I know that my father, who died unfortunately before I had the pleasure of adopting our children, before my husband and I adopted our children, he said to me in hospice when he was sitting there, he said, you know, I was frustrated. I was frustrated because we hadn't adopted yet, because I wasn't a mom yet. And here was my father, who raised me to believe that a woman's job was to have children and raise a family. And I was like trying to like validate my life in some way, shape, or form with him. And at that moment, he said, you know what? He said, if God didn't raise children that needed moms and dads, nobody like you, women like you, would never have the opportunity to be a parent. And I think that that's so important, because I know that with our children, they were meant to be in our family. There's no doubt about it. They may not exactly look like us. They may have much greater talents than us, but I have no doubt that they were meant to be in our family. And I would probably speculate that you would agree and think the same thing about your child. Is that correct?
I totally agree. I thought bringing home my little guy from the hospital was going to be the highlight of my life through this adoption journey. And it isn't. And then I thought, okay, he says, I'm a big boy. He's 3 years old. And he is saying things like, Mama, I love you big much. And that is an everyday joy that I have that I just can't even explain. I mean, I just thought the bringing him home was going to be the greatest thing. And now I've got it every day. He much more blesses me before I bless him, by far. But one of the things that we help people on is understanding the adoption process before they actually start the process, before they start their journey, and deciding what direction they want to go. Is this right for them right now, to open up their life to a child and to a birth mother and to the entire birth family? Because that is something that you feel excited about, but you also have to realize that it comes with other people.
Absolutely. And you know, I think that that's why I like your company so much, because what I have discovered is if you were to Google it, or if you were to buy a magazine like I did when I first started the search, the people that are most prominent, the companies that are out there, are the ones that are bluntly making the most money, and therefore able to advertise and create publicity about their call to action. And, you know, I mentioned DCF, and the reason why I mentioned DCF is all three of my children came from adopting through foster care. And what I learned is that in order to adopt a child like this, like they're not going to make it to the website, because by the time, the day my children were available for adoption, we were signing court orders saying we wanted these children because we fostered to adopt. So it's really understanding the system, really understanding your options, really understanding that, yeah, you could do what Brad and Angelia or whatever, the celebrity cool thing to do and go overseas and adopt a child. That may not be your calling, that may not be the right thing, and I'm an advocate for adoption no matter where you get your children from. But just because they come from a different country doesn't mean you may not have access to their medical records. You may not know everything that you could know if you adopted here domestically from the USA and really helped a child. And each child that is adopted, that's brought into your life, that's brought into your home, doesn't necessarily come with baggage, doesn't necessarily come with problems, doesn't necessarily have physical or medical conditions or limitations. They may be born to be with you, and I think that's really important. Now, I do know that there are a lot of myths. There's a lot of myths that lots of people have. I'm too old to adopt, I'm too young to adopt, I'm not rich enough to adopt, I can't afford to adopt. Talk to me a little bit about some things that they may not know. So if you aren't infertile, you've had your own children, you may be a little bit older, and you may be starting to experience the empty nest syndrome, can they still change the life of a child and make a difference?
You can absolutely change the life of a child to make a difference. One of the biggest myths out there is that in the United States, a birth mother, a birth father can come back at any time throughout the adoption process till the age of 18, and that's not true. Several years ago, that changed. The laws changed where they're more protective of representing the birth mother correctly. They're more protective in representing the adoptive families correctly. So a lot of families were going overseas, which costs a lot more money and it takes a lot more time, and you just don't have to. You can get that. Plus, just like you said, you don't have the medical records or the ability to sometimes get those overseas. Now, you do have a relationship here domestically with the birth family, and that's the most wonderful thing, is that you can still have communication with them, still ask them. Something I asked my birth mother this past year was, allergies are so high. My little guy was, sneezing all the time, so I wanted to ask her, what are other allergies that your other kids have? Because she has 3 other little kids. And another myth that's very popular out there is that it costs a lot. It does significantly cost a lot. It ranges, newborn domestic here in the U.S. starts off at $20,000 in today's economy. However, we have the adoption tax credit, which is just over $12,000 for this year.
I think that's so important, and one of the things that I've personally experienced and personally discovered is the joy that comes together when you create a family but create a home for a child, and that is so huge. And that's the one thing that both my husband and I had to deal with. It wasn't so much about what our wants were, what our needs were. It was about walking in faith and trusting in the plan, but also understanding that it was really about making the difference in our children's lives, who desperately needed guidance and mentorship and parents to love them, which is so important. So thank you so much for being here today. I greatly appreciate it. I know that you are a blessing. How many families have you brought together?
Personally, through the years, I've helped over 100 families. And I have to say it's quite selfish, because I emotionally get involved with my adopted families and sharing their joy, and it gives me such pleasure to do that.
That is fabulous, and I'm so excited to have you here today and just appreciate everything that you've shared. Lifetime movies are fabulous, but often they bring a lot of misconceptions of the whole adoption process. And if ever you have any questions, any concerns, if you've been placed with just a little nug at your heart by watching this, help make the difference in the life of a child, because you can make a difference. It doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how young you are, it doesn't matter where you are, you can make a difference. And I know Dawn can work with you across the nation. So connect with her, connect with me via the WOAMTEC directory, and let's truly look at our life legacy. That was so exciting to have Dawn here today, and she's changing hearts and changing lives across the nation, and that is super cool. She has a special gift that she wants to give away today, and today we're going to give this gift to anybody that logs in to the WOAMTEC Facebook group page at facebook.com. Go to groups and then search for WOAMTEC, WOAMTEC, and the first member who watches this broadcast and posts on that group page that they have had a baby within the past year is going to win a couture pair of sunglasses for a toddler, which is super cool. So thank you, Dawn, for being here. Thank you for giving away that prize. We are so excited to be learning from our members and changing children's lives. The next guest I'm going to introduce you to today is an amazing, stellar woman that not only is close to my heart because she does so much with WOAMTEC, but she helps people preserve their memories. And you know what? Our memories are priceless. I just recently looked back at some videos when our little kids were really, really tiny and just brand new babies, and it's just amazing how much you forget and how important those special moments are. So please give me a warm, warm, warm welcome to the fabulous Miss Gina McVeigh. Gina, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you take a moment and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what your company is all about?
Well, Gina McVeigh, my company is called Priceless Memories, and that's what they are. All of our memories are priceless. You can't put a price tag on them. And we're in the business of helping you preserve them and keep them alive.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. What do you do, and how can you help our members if they have photos, if they have old 8-track millimeter things, or if they have VHS tapes or all that stuff that we don't know anything about? Tell me what you do with those to keep their memories alive for legacies to come.
First of all, we can take all of your old photos and we can digitize them, which is a very popular thing to do these days, because as time goes by, they start to fade and they accumulate in boxes like this, and people just don't take the time to put them in albums, and so it makes it a whole lot easier for you to be able to do things with them if you can put them on a CD or a DVD. And by doing that, we can enhance them. So bring all those old pictures, especially the 60s and 70s. That's kind of my favorite time period for the pictures, because we enhance them and they just like pop back to life. It's so cool. They go from being faded to all of a sudden the color's back in again. It's like pushing a magic button. It's so fun. And then once they're on a CD or DVD, you can email them, you can have them reprinted, you can Facebook them, which is a lot of fun.
I think that's so important because, you know, I know that there are so many memories that I have, and I know how important photographs are because I was in the photography industry for so many years, that photographs are really priceless memories of people. But there's two things I've experienced that I think are so important to drive home. The first is, I remember when our precious little Michelle came to our house for the very first time, and she'd been told that I was going to be her mommy and Jeff was going to be her daddy, and she looked at a family photo that we had and she said, "I'm not in that, why?" And she stared at it like, if I'm part of your family, why am I not in that family photograph? And I remember the pride that she had when we validated her as one of our family members by replacing that photograph with the picture that she was in. So I know that's huge. But I also know that just recently I got a call from somebody that works with DCF, and they deal with children that are people. You may have seen recently on 60 Minutes, there was a show about families that were homeless, that had lost their homes, that were living in their cars, that were suffering. And this lady called and said, you know what, the family said that the one thing they missed the most, they lost, that was the most important thing to them in their lives. They can give up their home, they can give up their furniture, they can give up their clothes, they can live in a car. But if you don't have your memories, then they felt lost. And she said, would you be willing to do a family photograph of this family? And hearing those two things and really understanding how important photography is to you when you're not in that moment, or when you lose it all, when you have a fire, when you just forget your legacy and your history, I think is important. So can you share with us, Gina, some of the things that it takes to keep your legacy alive? Like, what do you have any suggestions for how to store your photographs, for what to do with your photographs before they get to you? Like, yes, we all need them digitalized. I think that's awesome. But what can we do to protect our family heirlooms?
Well, first of all, I'm always big on show and tell because I think people are mostly visual. And, taking a box like this, I, first of all, would recommend that you keep your photos and your videos in a cool, dry place. I have seen so many tapes, and these are all the different types of tapes that we work with. We've got the 8mm, the video 8, high 8. We've got the VHS tapes. These are the little VHS-Cs that fit. They're like this, but smaller, fit into an adapter. We even go back to the 8mm, the reel-to-reels. These are old. What I've found with these is, after time, if they've been in a warm place or damp place, a lot of people have stored them in the garage or in the attic, and they start to turn. Especially these will start to smell. If you have anything like this and you go in there and it has like a real sour vinegar smell to it, that means that they're going bad and that you're about to lose everything that you have on that tape. So if you can't get to it right away, the best thing to do is to get them out of the attic, get them out of the garage, and put them in a cool, dry place, whether it's under your bed or in a closet or whatever. But keep them in a cool, dry place. I've seen tapes that look like little mice have eaten them, or they look like little pieces of Swiss cheese. And you just can't, you lose it. You lose everything that's on there. And the sound goes away, the pictures start to fade. So if you can't at least get them transferred and updated, at least put them in a safe place.
So preserving your old memories, I can imagine, is very important, and I'm so glad that you offer this service to be able to help people not only in Florida but across America, which is really important. But I think that it's also important to be able to share those memories, and I love the fact that you mentioned sharing them via Facebook, putting them on YouTube, whatever that you can. But I also want to drive home the fact that even if you're capturing new memories, so let's say you're a new mom with a brand new baby, or you're growing your family and you're capturing things, and it's easy to take a photo with your smartphone and upload it to Facebook. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for how to store or back up or save the images that people are capturing right now and storing on their computers or storing on Facebook?
Well, it's definitely important to always have a backup, especially if you have them stored on your computer, because you're in jeopardy of losing what you have on there if you got a virus or something to that effect. I'm actually working with a company right now because I feel that it's very important that you should have a separate backup. Now, for me, it's easy to compact all of these into a CD or a DVD, and you can put it in a case. We can make extra copies, so you can always have one that's in your safety deposit box or even in a safe at home that's fire safety proof.
but there's a lot of storage facilities out there. The only thing that I have learned is that you kind of have to be aware, like even on Facebook, when you share or you put your pictures into those companies and files, there's a small print that basically says that those pictures become the property of those companies. And so I am working on working with a company on how to back up your photos in a separate facility, but keep it protected, keep it safe so that it's yours, because the last thing you want is all of your pictures all over the place without your permission.
You're exactly correct, and I think that's really important to drive home that fact. I've had numerous debates with people that are anti-social media. You know, I'm going to keep everything separate, and I'm going to keep everything safe, and nobody's going to tag me, and nobody's going to see me at different places or whatever. But I think it's really important to understand that anything you upload social media-wise is public, and it won't go away. And even if you delete it, trust me, it's not going away. And if you get into if you have a DUI and you kill somebody in the car wreck, and there's a picture that you've posted with a glass of wine in your hand, it's going to come back to haunt you one day if it could be worth money. And just be very, very careful with that. So protecting your images, but also capturing your images and saving your archived images, I think is really, really important, because you know what? As a mom, and as we celebrate Mother's Day, you are the person that is creating your family's legacy. You're the person that's passing your family's memories along to the next generation, and to the generation after that, and to the generation after that. But whether the images from 1960 or the images from 1970, I think it's really important just to remember that every image you capture today in 2012, 2020, 2050, wherever it may be, every image you capture today, there's also ways that you can use that to create a memory for your family, but most importantly for your child. So tell me a little bit, because I know we're going to see a video, and it's going to, we've probably seen a little bit of it already, but it's going to showcase a little bit from something you did special for your son. And you've got another son that's about to graduate, so congratulations, and I think that's so exciting. I know you're doing something special for him, but talk to me about how you've used this service to create priceless memories for your children.
Well, I also do slideshow presentations for special occasions. And when we started this business, part of the reason that I got into it is because I have so many photos. And I told my business partner, I said, there has to be a better way of being able to preserve and present our photos rather than just sitting around and looking at an album. So that's kind of how we got into this business. So one of the first things that I did, my son was graduating at the time from 8th grade, so I put a video together from his birth, I mean up till, started with me being pregnant, all the way through his 8th grade graduation. And so that was kind of a starting point for me to be able to share something that was fun and enjoyable. And he still, I mean, he's almost 20 now, but he still loves looking at that video. So now my oldest son is graduating college, and he's always said, Mom, how come you never did a video for me? So I've been in the process of putting all those photos together to do a video for him for his graduation present.
One of the things that I wanted to share with you is preserving your memories are priceless, and knowing that when you're planning your exit strategy, like we all, I think, teach our children, like what's going to happen if there's a fire, you know, drop to the floor, check the door, you know, check the windows or go out the windows, meet at the mailbox, people. One of the things that I just want to remind you is having your photos in a place that you can quickly take with you. I have learned year after year is one of the most valuable assets in your home, because memories truly are priceless. Thank you, Miss Gina May, for being here today. I appreciate you, I heart you, and you're going to do some videos for me too. And so Gina, tell them real quick, what is your contact information other than the WOAMTEC directory? How can they connect with you?
Our website is pricelessmemoriesllc.com.
Special thanks to Gina McVeigh. She did a stellar job sharing with us the importance of preserving our precious memories. I think that is so true. From being in the photography industry for so many years, I know how priceless a photograph can actually be. Gina has given us a precious gift, a priceless gift. The first person that logs on to the WOAMTEC Group Facebook page and notifies us that they want to preserve their memories and they need to capture their photos and create them digitally. If you reach out to Gina, the first person who posts on that page will win a $50 gift certificate to Priceless Memories. WOAMTEC is growing across America and we are so excited. But one thing that I want to remind you is it's so much more than just networking. We're here to be your business partners. We're here to be your allies, and we are growing nationwide. So we want to encourage you to connect with members across the United States. We want to encourage you to create strategic alliances everywhere, not just within your chapter. Reach out via Facebook. Take advantage of your business assessment. As you travel, take the time to stop and visit a chapter in a new location, and make sure you peruse the member-to-member benefits across America. You know, just recently the Crown Plaza offered us a special rate for WOAMTEC members by using a coupon code. You'll get more information about that soon. But we've also got members at different businesses that can help you make your summer a little bit more substantial and help you save even more money. So make sure you look at your member benefits and use them all. Log on to the directory and begin connecting, because it's those connections that will create relationships that will not only change your business, but it'll begin to change your life. You know, we appreciate all of our leaders. We appreciate all of our directors and all of our ambassadors that are making a difference in the lives of people across America. It is truly amazing to me to watch you bring our vision alive, to empower women, build businesses, and strengthen communities. You're donating thousands upon thousands of dollars to nonprofits. You're helping businesses grow substantially. And because of that, you're reviving the economy in America. As we move forward, remember, we are your business partner. We are here to help you make a difference in your business. Never be afraid to reach out and connect with us. Always connect with other members, and remember that when you surround yourself with positive, professional, proactive people that are smarter, wiser, and more successful than you, you will continue to be just as successful as them. God bless you in all you do, and I look forward to seeing you next month.